Okay, welcome everyone. This is going to be our anatomy review of the muscles of the legs. And I want to talk about, before we even get into the legs, I want to talk about a topic which is about S-curves and counterbalancing curves. If you remember, at the very beginning of the semester, in the very first anatomy lecture, we talked about how I said we would see shapes like this over and over again in the anatomy, in human anatomy, right? Where we would have counterbalancing curves from one side to the other. Because of the way our muscles work, which is in counterbalance to each other, one pulling when the other is pulling in the opposite direction. So we saw this basic structure like in the relationship between the triceps and then the biceps and the brachialis. So if we make that into a forearm, right? So, but anyway, the main point is that there's this structure, right? And in the legs, it's one of the places where we're going to see that structure. And I want to talk a little bit about what the implication that creates. Because when you're looking at a figure from the side, and the figure is standing completely straight, like legs kind of locked and straight as possible, the thighs have a lot of mass in the front, and the calves have a lot of mass in the back. And so we'll see that similar kind of curve. We'll see a curve like this, right, running through. But one of the things that's really important to remember, I'm going to finish my leg standing straight up here. One of the things to remember, though, is that the direction of the weight is straight down. So, and this is an issue that we will actually see again when we get to the neck. We've talked about it, I think, in class at least once or twice, about how to understand the neck, you have to understand it both as a curve and at the same time as directing weight as a straight line. And really, in a way, you could almost think of the neck as multiple different types of curves that create the overall impression of the head attaching to the torso diagonally, but that the way the spine works in the neck is that it directs the weight straight down. So that's point number one. So in this lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about the leg, about what muscles you need to know for the test, which is probably the point you want to know mostly. And we're also going to talk about something else. What else are we going to talk about? Oh, drawing the foot and also drawing the leg when foreshortened. So ahead of time, I drew out these anatomical legs, so just to save some time. And but the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about this side view, because we're going to start with the pelvis, since that's the thing that we are most familiar with, right? Here is the iliac crest, and there is the anterior superior iliac spine. I'm going to go ahead and label that right now. I'm just going to write ASIS, but we all remember that that stands for anterior superior iliac spine. And right about here is the great trochanter. Right, all familiar points to us. And we have already talked about the gluteus maximus and the gluteus medius, but I wanted to talk about them all as a set in terms of then also how they relate to the other muscles of the thigh. So let's go ahead and label those. I'm going to kind of draw them in a little bit. If you're thinking that the drawing of the gluteus maximus is maybe a little bit shortchanged, that is in part because, like, when we're looking at this, when we think about the gluteus maximus, when we're thinking about the backside of a human figure, there's a lot more mass other than muscle on there as well, with fat, right, and tissue. But right now we're just talking about the muscles, so keep that in mind. So right here, like I said, is the great trochanter. And over the great trochanter, and this whole area, is a large amount of tendon. Which I'm going to put it in white. Leonard, there's a timer on that, right? So let me know when we get to 10 minutes. Okay, so this is the gluteus maximus. And that's the gluteus medius. Remember, the gluteus medius is smaller than the maximus. The maximus is in the far back, and the medius is on top of the great trochanter, kind of wraps around, and also fills in the underside of the iliac crest. And then the other muscle that we haven't talked about that is part of this set of muscles that wrap around the great trochanter and wrap around this large tendon, which we will be talking about in just a second. Actually, I'm going to have to look up the name of that tendon. Ah, yes, it's the femoral tendon. This muscle right here is the tensor fascia. We know that word. Seen it before. Latte. I think that's spelled right. Did I have that? No, I switched it. It's latte. Okay. Sounds like a drink, but it's not a coffee drink. It's a muscle. Let's get this a little bit more defined. The differences there. Okay. And all three of these muscles connect to that tendon. Let me go ahead. That's the femoral tendon right there. Femoral tendon. Okay. The femoral tendon, not going to be on the test, but it might be an extra credit. So keep that in mind. Okay, so we've got that covered, and then that's the same right here. We can see this is the back side, right, where we're looking at the gluteus maximus more straight on. And then here, from kind of a side oblique sort of view, we have the gluteus medius. We have barely any view at all when we're looking straight back of the tensor fasciae latae, but that's it right there. I'm just going to label that TFL right there, and then that's a gluteus, glute medius, and glute maximus. Okay, so now that we've got that understood, right, let's take a look at what we see from the front. From the front, those same muscles, we don't see much of that is hidden, right? All of this femoral tendon is pretty much hidden. The gluteus maximus is completely hidden, of course. There's a great trochanter right there, by the way, for those of you who are keeping score. But we do see very little, a very small amount of the gluteus medius right here. And we do see, so that's right there, gluteus medius. I'll label that again, glute med. All right, and then over here, the tensor fascia latae. Okay, so that's what is all of this mass. That's all we see of it when we're looking at the front. Now, one of the major muscles that defines the look of the front of the thigh is this curve right here, right? This muscle right here is the sartorius. And the sartorius has its important function in terms of the rotation of the thigh, but one of the other major important functions from our point of view is how it really defines the edge between the extensor muscles of the thigh versus the adductor muscles. This whole group right here is the adductor group. I believe it's Blake is going to be doing, no, I think Blake's doing the foot. Someone's doing the lecture on the adductor muscles of the thigh, and we'll talk about that just a little bit, but leave the rest of that for that student to cover.
We're close to 10 minutes now.
Okay, so I'm going to just cover the three main muscles of the thigh very briefly, just introduce them, and then we'll cut to a switch. And so we have the biceps femoris, no, the rectus femoris right here, the vastus lateralis, it's on the lateral side, and the vastus medialis, which is on this side right here. Okay, I'll go into a little bit more detail about each of these and their shape after the break.